Hello, welcome to my studio. I'm Sarah, and I originally wanted this video to be for Star Wars Day, but I've been so busy. But now I am finally on summer break, so I am so excited to make more videos. For this drawing, I am redrawing my Star Wars OC, Emily Bridger. I'd intended for this to be an annual redraw, but it's been 3 years since I drew the last one. But if there was so much of a difference between 2021 and 2022, I'm super excited to see the improvement now. I did technically draw her in 2023, but that wasn't a proper redraw, and I'm not super happy with how it turned out, even if it is a fun interaction between her and Ezra. Which, if you haven't seen that video, Emily is Ezra's sister. Apparently I have a thing for making my OCs the siblings of canon characters. I've got Emily and Ezra, my OC Farron and Shad from Twilight Princess, and I kinda decided that my Kingdom Hearts OC Mayu is related to Leon, which I haven't introduced Mayu yet. I'll make a video on her eventually. They need to announce Kingdom Hearts 4. And side note, it seems adding these little bang bits to my characters is mandatory now. On the one hand, doing this allows me to connect my characters to their respective universe in a cool way, and gives a foundation for their design and backstory. It also lets me relate them to some of my favorite characters. It all started with Emily years ago, who knows why. And for Farron and Mayu, I already had designs in mind, which reminded me of Shad and Leon respectively, so I was like, why not? Anyways, one thing I realized from past times drawing Emily is that I hadn't really taken into consideration how young she is. She's 9, because that's the oldest she can be to fit into canon. I love figuring out how to fit my characters into canon. I also realized I rarely draw children. Their proportions are quite different from adults. I do think of them as smaller and their facial features bigger, which is correct, but their limbs are also usually much longer and thinner. I think that made a huge difference in redrawing Emily the way I wanted this time around. My sketch was pretty clean to begin with, so I just cleaned it up a bit more and didn't do line art. I don't mind doing line art traditionally, but for some reason I find it so tedious digitally, so I haven't done it much. And this way it's easier to keep that sketch look that everyone complains they lose when they do the line art. I really enjoy figuring out the planes of the face, and funny enough, even though I haven't seen Arcane and don't plan on watching it at the moment, the way I've improved in my rendering has definitely leaned into that style, which I think is neat. A friend once told me my art reminded him of Arcane, and that was such a big compliment because the show's visuals are stunning. I love the way the planes of the face are emphasized, and finding a good balance between hard and soft shadows is something I've been experimenting with. I also messed around with coloring her eyes. There are so many different ways people render eyes, and it adds so much to the piece. Usually I add streaks, like you can see I did it first, but then I did this hard gradient that I really like, that you'll see in a bit. I don't really want to go full-on sparkly anime girl eyes, but I also don't want to limit myself from exploring stylizations that maybe aren't as realistic. I couldn't help adding some purple bounce light after adding purple hints to the shadows. That's something I've started trying to do because blue and purple look amazing in the shading of skin. I first used blue in the skin shading in this piece of Athena from Epic the Musical that I did, which was a huge trust the process moment, but I love how it turned out. I loved rendering her hair. I love this look of simplifying the hair into groups, and the braids especially were so satisfying to shade. I have been struggling with how I want to render hair digitally. Traditionally, I love the textures I achieve, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that digitally in the same way. But I have been able to draw hair very shiny, and I love that. Although, again, I struggle to find that balance between more semi-realistic and the very stylized, shiny shading that many artists do. The effect this kind of H-shape gives is really neat though, and I love the way I love to draw manga renders hair by erasing into the highlight like this. I added this gradient with the overlay blending mode to try and imitate the way hair is usually darker at the roots, and to emphasize the band of highlight at the top. At this point, I kinda wish I had just left it alone, but I wanted to attempt to add some of that texture I mentioned earlier, and the Rebel style has more lines of strands in the hair, so I think having those references pulled up influenced me a bit. I'm not unhappy with the result though, and this colored pencil brush worked well with the way it drags colors. When it came to rendering the leather, I really wanted to convey that texture. Like you can look at it and tell that it's leather and not just some random brown material. And I think I was successful in that. When looking at different references, I noticed that 1, leather is quite reflective, and 2, the highlights are much less saturated, but there is pretty high contrast in the values. And depending on how thick the leather is, it can bunch up like this. I'm super happy with how the wrinkles and seams of her top turned out. The blending tool in Clip Studio Paint works well to blend some edges and not others if you use it right. There is a ton more I could learn, but for now I'm really happy with what I achieved for this piece. And I added more purple to the shadows, which was actually a mistake I made last time I drew Emily, and it worked out well. It's interesting to see how I've added more and more detail to Emily's character design each time I redraw her. I think I'm happy with her design at this point. I didn't change much this time, except for the little openings in the gloves like Ezra has. I had a hard time shading her dress. I just could not figure out how it would sit on her legs. Also, something I somehow just noticed after having this character for years is the fact that her mom has a purple outfit, which makes Emily's color palette actually make sense, and not just because purple is my favorite color. And I'm pretty sure I hadn't noticed this, but the lighter stripes I've added to her design match both her mom's and Ezra's outfits in the Bridger family portrait. That's probably silly, but I got so excited when I realized her design matched theirs even more than I intended. Ezra has mainly orange in his design, and Emily has purple, which are both secondary colors, tying Ezra and Emily together nicely from a design standpoint, which is something I definitely thought of before, and totally isn't me trying to make a random design choice from when I was 9 sound like it has meaning. Shading white things is a lot of fun because you can use just about any color for the shadows. In this case, I used purple, blue, and green for the leggings, but no gray. I've talked almost entirely about the art process for this and hardly anything about the character, but since you're still watching, here's a bit more about Emily. I mentioned in her last video that she was born after Ephraim and Mira were imprisoned, so Ezra never knew about her. That is until he had a vision, and that lovely white loaf cat led him to his old home where he found Emily and the rebel. The original story I wrote had a lot of weird recreations of parts of the show, but not a straight rewrite of the show because I can't stand fics like that, so I need to rewrite some of her stuff. And here's the progression of 8 years of improvement. Thank you so much for watching. A bit late, but may the 4th be with you. And don't forget, Jesus loves you.